In this next session, like I said earlier, the main purpose is to have our panelists, so to speak, to just share from their own personal reflections. We've had a summary of the report. We have our own experiences about or lived through some of these inequalities that we are talking about now. So we shall give each one of them about 5 minutes to just, from their own heart, to speak to us, from their own reflections, what these numbers mean to them, and also from their own experiences. May we start off with Honorable Senator Mr. Kipchumba Murkomen, please.
Thank you very much. The leadership of SID and Mrs. Katindi CV Njonjo for a very good job. I think personally I am very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting us, and particularly inviting me to represent the Senate. I'm sure more senators would have wished to be here, but we have a meeting of all the Senate and the security leaders going on at the moment. First of all, I believe that statistics, research, education is very important. And sometimes you launch such books, such reports, and as a country we don't take reports and books seriously. Someone said the other day, and it's a very unfortunate incident, that when the Westgate issue occurred, the only place which was not looted is the bookshop. So basically, I think first of all, I'd like to congratulate Katindi for doing a very good job with your team, and also Kenya National Bureau of Statistics for doing a very good job. Indeed, I am one person who believes that the Kenya Bureau of Statistics should be made an intergovernmental body with greater independence, because their work will have a profound impact on matters inequality and how we treat and share resources among and between counties and national government, among counties and between counties and national government. So it's a very important report. I appreciate your work. Of course, I'm not saying I agree with everything, because we will now subject it to discourse, discussion, find out exactly why sanitation is a problem in rural areas. Well, in the rural areas, there is no congestion. I don't know if you are saying that the county government should spend more money helping the people to dig pit latrines or something of that sort. I would have thought that sanitation issues, for example, is more an urban problem than a rural problem. And I may be wrong, but we will subject you to greater discussion. First of all, I think Katini did not spend a lot of time presenting about the history. But the reason why we have devolution is because of the history. And we cannot talk about inequality without talking about sessional paper number 10 of 1965 as a policy document that actually streamlined and deepened inequalities in our country. And therefore, for me, devolution is an answer to that inequality that was started in 1965 or even before. We inherited some level of inequalities from the colonial government, and then we emphasized inequality using sessional paper number 10 of 1965. And since then, the railway, for example, the reason why urban areas are in certain places, we have been told that the railways are within 100 meters from the cities are within 100 meters from the railway, where the railway passed. And so these are some of the conversations we should be having as we go through 2030 Vision 2030, and we are talking about flagship projects and discussions about visions of the various counties, the county integrated development plans. It must answer that question of inequality so that we don't find situations where the policies of county governments are going again to borrow from the history that we've had, and they are going to continue the inequality. I'm very happy that this data is also focusing on the inequalities within the counties, and particularly the different wards of the counties. And that is a very important. Two is to say that in the legal framework, it is important. It will actually assist us as Senate and CRA as we discuss the issues of the formula. The formula is coming up for review, and I think this report is very necessary in terms of discussing how shall we discuss the horizontal sharing of resources and the vertical sharing of resources. And you know, I have a problem with the way in which money is being divided to the counties, because we give them lump sum amount. We say Elgeyo Marakwet County, we've given you 3 billion. Nairobi County, we've given you 9 billion. But we don't ask ourselves, of the 3 billion that has gone to Elgeyo Marakwet County, how much of that money was meant for health, for example, was meant for water, was meant for education. So the money goes to the county, and then the county, perhaps after dividing that money, will realize that what they used to get for health before devolution is less than what they are getting, or what they are able to divide. So we might need to rethink about particularly critical areas like agriculture, water, and health, so that we are saying we have conditions granted to the counties. By the time Senate is passing the division of revenue and allocation of revenue bill, there is already conditioned the amount for every county for the essential service areas, so that cumulatively we can achieve the objective that we have. If we are saying 10% of the money should go to agriculture across the country, we achieve that objective by already putting a condition, so that we don't find the counties going to spend, for example, in building cities and so forth at the expense of the critical areas that we realize that they have inequality problems. So I think as a Senate and CRA, we need to be helped by such research and other people to identify those areas that we are going to deal with. 2 is to talk about equalization fund. Most of us have a problem with the equalization fund for the simple reason that the Constitution, Article 204, says that the money should go to areas that have inequality. It doesn't say it should go to counties that have inequality. Now, if this money is a conditional fund from the national government, it should go to an area. So the discussion we should be having is that, should we not say that an area will be closer to a ward than a county? So that if Loima is the most marginalized constituency, for example, the national government, the grant for equalization fund should go to Loima constituency and not to even if the county will play a role, but positioned properly to the particular area. If it's a ward in Kajiado County, it should go to that ward and not punish that ward in Kajiado County because the rest of the Kajiado County is rich. So if that was the objective, because the Constitution talks about an area, the definition of an area in Article 204 becomes a very critical. And again, as that comes for review, that is an issue we need to deal with. And second last is when we talk about socioeconomic development. You see the counties and priorities of the counties. The counties now are getting scared that if you talk, we commend Machakos County, for example, for the huge project they launched the other day. The other counties that are supposed to be agriculture counties, for example, or to do with livestock, might get distracted and think that because we have applauded Machakos County, they need now to think about Turkana City instead of Turkana water to the people of Turkana, or agriculture, or matters of health, and so forth. So the counties, again, in their county integrated development plan, must demonstrate that they are working towards achieving the Article 43, because the greater function is health, education, which is pre-primary anyway, but also water and agriculture, food security is the main function of the counties. We should not push our counties so much to talk about manufacturing when we don't have the raw material, the agriculture itself is not doing well. We should not push them so much to talk about manufacturing if we don't have water, if there is no water to the people in the household. So I think we must also judge the county governments on basic services, on how they are going to improve access to basic services and access to Article 3 requirements of socio-economic functions, than putting them to have mega projects at the expense of the projects that are going to impact people's lives. So I think this is a very good report. We support it. We let us measure the leadership of the counties based on achieving this, and I like what Katindi said about the baseline. It will be a basis under which we will say 5 years down the line, as a result of the priorities and the policies of the county government, we are able to achieve these services. Last, how shall we be able to deal with inequalities in the counties if the counties are pulling apart? If the leadership are unable to sit together? If the governor does not even consult the constituency MP? How shall we be able to do that if the MCAs are on 6-month strike, indefinite strike, for example? I think it is important that leaders at the county, I mean, I had a very disheartening story that there was a minister in the national government, cabinet secretary of agriculture, was invited to a constituency in Nyanza province and told to come because they were going to discuss a particular project which was in a particular constituency. It was then the cabinet secretary to invite the member of parliament to tell him, can you accompany me to your constituency? You see, this pulling apart by the leaders of the county, no framework where the governor, the senator, the member of National Assembly, the ward rep are able to sit together, and each one of them promise something to the people. They are unable to synchronize their policies and objectives. We will lead to a situation where the CDF fund, for example, is being put to a different issue. The senator is organizing a protest when the governor is launching a project. We, as a Senate, are working on a legislation brought by Senator Sang that will ensure that these leaders are able to sit in one table and be able to agree on the main projects of their county and ensure that the leadership of the county is pulling in one direction. And I think these are some of the issues that we need to push as a country. And by the way, it discouraged me, sorry, I'm taking more than 5 minutes. I get discouraged that every time we pass a legislation in Senate that will ensure that the governors are put on checks and balance and they're able to remain a servant of the people, there is a brand out here, and I hope all of us who are in civil society and government, there is a branding that looks like if you touch on powers of a governor, you are actually anti-devolution. We might need to wake up from that. We were not creating offices for power. It was for service to the people. Every power that was given to any office was to necessitate service delivery to the people at the local level. And so we need to have a lesser discussion on the power and the service. I told some governors that we must hear more governors around the county than issuing statements in Nairobi and Mombasa. A senator is allowed to go to Migori if you are from Mombasa County, because you are serving the whole country. But the governors need to spend more time solving these problems that we have put here, because that was the reason why they were only elected within a particular jurisdiction, to solve that problem, than to spend more time, traversing the country and issuing political statements. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator. I'm glad that you have committed to engaging with this report going forward. And the purpose actually of reports like this, if we were to agree with everything that is in it, would really not serve the purpose. So let's be critical, let's strip it apart, let us engage with it, and that's what I think is going to be most useful. May I now invite Ms. Anastasia Wairu, whom I said like earlier, she's the chairperson of the Muungano wa Wanavijiji. And as you come to the podium, I only have 2 questions for you. One is, what do these numbers mean for you? What does this data tell you from where you come from the constituency that you live with, the people that are around you? And secondly, we have in the room here senior representatives from various arms of government. Seated next to you is the Honorable Senator, who is also the chair of the Devolution Committee. We also have the Honorable Maura from the National Assembly, and there are many representatives from constitutional commissions. What would you want to tell them they need to do to help address these challenges? Thank you.
Morning, everybody. I'm Anastasia Wairimu. Thank you. I'm Anastasia Wairimu from Kahawa, Soweto. I live in a slum, so congested. Also, I'm the chair lady of Akiba Mashinani Trust. In our side of Muungano wa Wanavijiji, the coalition of slum dwellers, we know we have only two tribes, the rich and the poor. We are so marginalized in our area because when you go to seek a job, you are disqualified because you come from a slum. There is inequality because there is, when you say you come from a slum, you cannot go to the board of the CDF, so in the slum the children cannot be educated. I'm semi-illiterate because my parents could not educate me. Also, I was unable to educate my children because I had no a good job. Also, I thank you for those who have brought these tactics here. But in my view, I sometimes disqualify them. We do the data profiling, although we are not so educated. If you ask me how many I'm comfortable. If you ask me how many households are there in our village, I will tell you. And maybe you are here, you are within our constituency and you do not know how many households are in Nairobi, in slum area. And you may not know how many toilets are there, but they are all in my fingertips. Also, the women and men, we do the profiling according to the education we have. According to the profiling team, we are able to secure, also we have all the data of all the slums in Kenya. We are also educated to use the GBAs, globally and internally. So if you want to know the exact figure of the marginalized, we shall give you. And to this, may I call Kingsley Karaoke so that he can interpret for me where I want you to know more.
Good morning.
I have said that I'm semi-illiterate. I may be not able to drive the message I want to you, but he will help me. Kulingana na makazi, wana vijiji wa kutoka kwetu hawawezi kupata kazi hata ya kuosha manguo kwa watu wale matajiri kwa sababu wametoka slums.
It's very difficult for slum dwellers to access even menial jobs of washing clothes for the rich because they are coming from slums.
Pia kwa masomo hawawezi kusomesha watoto wao kwa sababu hawana pesa ya kusomesha watoto.
Funds are limited to, they don't have enough funds to educate their own children just based on the amounts they earn.
Primary wanaweza kwa sababu ni ya bure, lakini secondary japokuwa mtoto afanye vizuri, tuende kwa Mr. Mwangi wa Equity asaidia watoto. Hatuna watu wengine wa kusaidia watoto wetu.
Primary education is free, so they are able to get their kids through primary education, but secondary education becomes quite a big challenge because unless you go to Mwangi, Dr. Mwangi of Equity for Wings to Fly, then there's no chance for their children to get secondary education.
Makazi yetu manyumba ni nduni.
Our homes are basically built from mud, wood, wattle, tin shacks, 10 by 10 size structures. I'm
Ni wa-
only interpreting how she's...
Yes. Ni wangapi wenu wamekaa kwenye 10 by 10 house room?
Ni wangapi, sorry. How many of you, how many of you can actually make a living, total living, within a 10 by 10 space?
Kanyumba kanaitwa self-confused.
It's a self-confused house, not self-contained.
Na hawana choo. Ikiwa ni choo moja inatumiwa na watu 1,000 na unataka kuitumia.
Basically, there's nothing in terms of sanitation facilities. One toilet serves 1,000 people within the slum.
Serikali inapoongea infrastructure, imejengea wanaslam vyoo ngapi?
When the government talks about infrastructure, how many toilets have they built within the slum for slum dwellers?
Wanapojenga majumba ya kukondesha wafanyikazi wao, wamejengea wanaslam nyumba gapi?
When they build civil service housing projects, how many housing projects have been built for slum dwellers?
Wanapotengeneza pahali ya kupitia maji, wanafikiria kunawa waislamu ama wanafikiria tu wakati wa kukujia wakati wa uchaguzi ndipo wanajua kuna waislamu?
When they are making drainage and building plans for drainage within the city, when do they think about the slums, or do they consider slums just as vote banks during election periods?
Kutokana na hayo, wanavijiji wamejiunga pamoja, wakatengeneza kiondo ile inaitwa Akiba Mashinani Trust.
Because of this exclusion, slum dwellers have come together and have put together a basket, a fund that they manage called Akiba Mashinani Trust.
Wanaposema, serikali inaposema wanatoa kitengo ya pesa kusaidia fulani, wameshatoa pesa ama wanapeleka kwenye bank zile kubwa, Equity, Bankrest, zile kubwa kubwa. Serikali imekumbuka kujua kama kuna banki ya mashinani ambayo inaitwa Akiba Mashinani Trust.
When the government puts aside resources for certain projects, they basically consolidate these funds within large formal banks, totally ignoring the massive poor and the products that they've put together to manage their specific situations.
Na kwa akili zile kidogo Mungu ametupea, tumeweza kushikana na kutaka kubadilisha vile watu wanatuona, kwa sababu hata ingawa sisi hatuna manyumba, tuko na akili.
You may think that slum dwellers do not have education, but bottom line, slum dwellers are more street smart than most people can actually imagine.
Tumeweza kujengea vijiji 5 manyumba, kutoka zile za seti carton tumejenga hata ya gorofa.
We've been able, just with our limited funds, to build houses, big multi-story houses for slum dwellers in 5 specific regions.
Na kuna wengine ambao tumewachukua na tukawapeleka shamba ingine tunaita Greenfield, tunaanza kujenga.
Due to the congestion within the slum, we have actually been able to purchase land in other corners of the city and build greenfield housing projects for slum dwellers to try internally to decongest the slums.
Na ndio nasema, ndio tukae vizuri, watajiri na wale maskini, wararahoi na wararahai, tuwe pamoja, ni kujaribu kuweka hii gap iwe kidogo badala ya kuipanua.
It is now important for the rich policy makers, people who have access to policy issues that can help the poor, to work together with the poor so that we can bring down the gap between the rich and the poor.
Tumejaribu kuwapa makazi hata vijana wetu, ndio watoke kwenye mitaani kupiga wengine geta. Tumewapatia kazi ya kutengeneza zile vitu za kujenga nyumba zinaitwa radis.
We have had to put our youth into employment, manual employment, to build building material that is cheaper than what is being done around the city by contractors.
Vijana wetu wanatoka hapa wanaenda kutengeneza radis Uganda and Malawi. Kenya imewapatia makazi gani hao vijana wako na ujuzi hiyo?
We are having to export slum youth to go work in Uganda and in other places to build laddies for the construction of cheap, low-cost housing as a solution for slum dwellers.
Kwa hayo machache nataka kusema hivi, ndio tajiri na maskini tuwe pamoja, kwa sababu nchi hii ni yetu. Ni lazima tujue vile tutatengeneza hii gap iwe kidogo, na tupe hawale wengine, na tupate kuwabadilisha wawe wa Kenya halisi.
It is critical for the rich and the poor to work together, basically to ensure that the city, that the country prospers and we move together without any problems.
Tajiri anahitaji maid ambaye anasoma.
The rich man needs a maid who has some level of education.
Kwa sababu hata ukimwachia maziwa na kuna mchanganyiko pale, hataweza ikiwa hatajua ratio.
Because even if he leaves a pint of milk there and the person doesn't know the ratio on how to mix, there'll be a problem.
Kwa hivyo tusaidiane, tuinue maisha ya wale wako chini, na ndio inasababishanga ni hata siwezi kusomanga mavitu hii inaandikangwa pale, kwa sababu hiyo hainisaidii sana. Ikiwa wenye kuandika hizo vitu hawanisaidii, sio ni umuhimu yake.
It's quite a challenge to sit and watch all these statistics, because they don't help me, because they don't really articulate the pain and the issues that I and thousands of other slum dwellers have.
Thank you so much.
Let me just say one thing that probably she did not mention, but I think is critical. We've had our statistics that Nairobi holds about 60% of Kenya's GDP. Yeah? Yet again, about 65% of our city's population lives in slums without access to water, without access to toilets, without access to sanitation, without access to security, lighting, drainage. We have slum dwellers living in 1 acre within a slum holds 318 households. That's over 1,170 people living in a 1 acre parcel of land. So there's many issues that Anastasia hasn't mentioned, to do with zoning, whereby people are zoning certain areas and saying this is low density. What's happening to the high density? That right now, slum dwellers have to live on top of each other, and the houses that they're living on top of are actually made of mabati. We have mabati gorofas. Thank you.
Asante sana Mama Anastasia kwa haya ambayo umetuelezea leo, na tunashukuru sana umeweza kuja kuwa na sisi siku ya leo kutuelezea hayo yote. In the interest of time, just to try and move ahead, I would like at this point to also invite Mr. Mohamed Abdul Badida, who doesn't need any introduction. And as you've noticed, I think he was the only person who was walking to the panel received an applause. So that in itself says a lot. So just 2 questions for you. As someone who comes from some of the areas that have been described here as being the most marginalized and unequal, share with us some of that experience, but also, as you were running for president a few months ago, what was your vision to try and address some of these challenges?
Good morning. I think the last picture, after the lady delivered a lot of mathematics, the last item explains a lot and everything. And that there is no justice and there is no equality in Kenya, and because of the Society for International Development internationally, you could see, and you were shocked, when I went for the presidential thing, all of you are wondering, who is this tiny thing from the most remote Wajir? Where is he from? What does he want? You know, you could not even imagine that I'm a human being. That much psychologically, you believe in big people and big things, and you are so complex. It was practical. When I went round the 47 counties complying with the Political Parties Act, I go to a county and I tell them I'm registering a party. For what reason? No, we need a change in leadership. And who is the leader? Myself. Then they will say, there is a madman there. By speech and the way he dresses, he looks normal. But when you listen to what he says, he's mad. let me summarize. The mathematics given there is exact, if not less. And a very good summary, God created us, and in humanity, the most kind character, mark this, the most kind character is a woman. And she is more kind when she becomes a mother. After 50 years of independence, is there inequality or there is fairness? You could see a woman had nothing in her house for her children. Nothing. She approached organizations or friends to explain what she goes through, but none could not understand. And the best thing that she could do was to walk into a supermarket, get a 2-kilo unga, and put it under the pan. That is. Imagine when the most kind, when the most merciful character goes to that extent, when condition forces a mother to that extent, then this is a man-eat-man society. What is the cause? What is the cause? I beg to read a verse in the Bible. Will you allow me to do that? Okay, I have the Bible. Why? Why? Oh, it is leaders. No, it is not leaders. No, it is this. Why? Just listen to this. I hope I will not. It is my 5 minutes, yeah? This is a letter by Paul to Timothy. You may call it the second letter. Remember, there will be difficult times in the last days. Remember, there will be difficult times in the last days. People will be selfish. People will be selfish. They will be greedy. They will be boastful. They will be boastful. They will be deceiving. They will be insulting, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, irreligious. They will be unkind, merciless, violent, and fierce. They will hate the good. If you want to be a straightforward person in Kenya, you will suffer. You will suffer. And if you are a third, you will progress. I don't know how and why. Yeah. They will be reckless and swollen with pride. They will be reckless and swollen with pride. They will love the pleasure. They will love pleasure rather than God. They will hold to the outward form of religion and reject the power of religion. Now, if you just analyze, what does it cost the community, the society, if all of us are selfish? What does it cost? If 40 million Kenyans are greedy, and all of them in one way or the other will go home with 1,000 they have stolen from their own Kenyan property, what do you think will happen if all of us are boastful, pride, irreligious? All these adjectives conclude why there is inequality and why it will continue unless religious institutions will rise up to the occasion. What is the solution? What do we do? That is the book of James. What do we do? The book of James, chapter 2, verse 14. The solution is faith and action. The solution is faith and action. I read, my brothers, what good is it for someone to say that he has faith if actions do not prove it? Can that faith save him? Suppose there are brothers or sisters who need clothes and don't have enough to eat. Suppose. This is directly from the book. There are brothers and sisters, they don't have clothes and they don't have food. That is a question posed. What good is there in you saying to them, God bless you, keep warm and eat well? God bless you, keep warm and eat. We address. Munajua tutamaliza shida yenu. Munajua my salary is 2 million and you have nothing. Ya mkae tu hivyo hivyo. Mkae hivyo hivyo mbarikiwe. How? I'm hungry. And the last item, this is an advice to everybody, still in the books of James. The book of James, chapter 4, verse 17. Whoever knows what is right to do, whoever knows that this is something that is right and must be done, and fails to do it, and fails to do, for him it is a sin. When you know this is wrong, but you cannot do it because of respecting the boss, but because of you don't want to do it because your tribe, we are, I'm sorry to say this, most of us are idol worshippers, and we worship tribe and money. Tribe and money, we worship. These are the two idols we worship. Let's be faithful. We all belong to a religion, and we all believe in one God. We came to this world naked. Nani alikuja na nguo yake, madam? You came with some. Kuna mtu alikuja na suti. We all came naked, and we will all go naked. You know, when you put on a suit and I'm dead, you put on, and youth will follow me there, throw the coffin, take the suit and leave me naked there. Because I'm meant to go naked. Let's do this. I don't blame the government because the government is you and me. I don't blame tribe because it is there. All of us belong to one community. You need to know I'm a Borana, and I was born in Wajir. You know, it was before this mathematics and other organizations giving you such figures. Boss, we were almost going mad because of problems. And after teaching in Wajir, I was brought to the refugee camp to teach, and I saw 36,000 refugees who were provided only with 10 kg of maize, dry maize. And somebody will come crying, so what is the mess? What is the problem? The problem is relationship between us and the mighty God. You came and found the skies there. You came and found it raining. You came and found it, the earth and the mountains were there. All these were done by a God, and He has a system. Love yourself. Love others more than you love yourself. Respect others more than you respect yourself. Imagine, this report is okay, but Hersi, where is it going? Where is the report going? We have had a lot of, Kenyans, we are very good in policy making. If you look at the 2030 program, if you look at the strategic plan by 27 countries in 1998, when you look at what we have in paper, no place is better than Kenya. But when it comes to implementation, we are the poorest. I beg you, let's search for the truth. Let's go. Zamani, Kenya, Sundays, you could go and sleep on the road. There are no cars. Today, kuna jam kubwa. Why? Because ile siku hata tulipatia kanisa tumekataa. We are now changing it to we are going to the animals orphanage. No. We need to have the 24-hour system divided. 8, 8, 8. 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. 8 hours for our job. We need to work and earn a living. 24 minus 8. Eh? And we work 8 hours, yeah? 8 hours, we need to have contact with books. Westgate was robbed by us, and the only place they didn't go were the bookshop. You know, that is a big message. That is a very mighty message. And they usually say, if you want to hide anything, I'm very sorry, anything from an African, put it in books. When Hersey called me that there's a meeting, I was reading, I give 8 hours to whether secular or religious books. I have my 8 hours. When I was reading, sometimes I wonder, do you have these books? Do you have them? Because I want to rush in the street and shout, come and see this. Because these things are golden. This is life. 8 hours, knowledge. What is the balance? 8. We need to rest. We need to sleep. Maybe 6 at night and 2 during the day, so that we have the energy. If I was the president of this country, I will have provided lodgings in all the offices so that afternoon you go and sleep kidogo. I beg to go. There is a lady dentist. She constructed a prayer room at Runda, behind Gigiri, the new Runda. Her husband is a cardiologist, a heart specialist. Now the problem they have is, you know, we have a slump in Gigiri. Do you know that? It is called something starting with a G. Gidogoro. Now after she constructed in a 2-acre land, the poor go for prayers and the rich refused because they say, these are poor. How do I pray with them? So the lady called me and she said, why don't you come and we see how we can merge these two groups together so that they can comfortably meet and socialize. And you know, the Nyumba Kumi program is a very good one. It's a very good one. So I'm rushing there. I told them on Tuesday, midday, Tuesday, 12. She's waiting with her husband. We want to bring the poor and the rich together. We want to come up with strategies. So when I leave the room, it's not that I don't want to listen to what the ladies and gentlemen and all of you have. It's not that I don't want to leave the lunch, but there is something practical about inequality and injustice in Kenya. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mwalimu. Nothing to add, nothing to take away. Let me also recognize the presence of Honorable Maura Isaac, who joined us a bit late, but was grateful enough to just come straight up to the podium. Mheshimiwa, you have had a chance to listen to what has been discussed so far in the conversation that we have here, and we are very eager to hear also what this data and information regarding inequality means to you personally, from your own personal experience, but also now that you sit in the August House. What do you see yourself, what do you see the challenges in front of you, and what do you plan to do to help address some of these issues that we are discussing here? Karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Good mid-morning. You know, after we have had a new formula from Abduba Dida about, you know, the other day it was about food, now it's about hours. So I think we are learning a lot. He's still expanding his classroom. Now, listening to our conversation, and the other day I heard within East Africa, we have 14 million Kenyans, 14 million East Africans who earn $2,100. And these are the people who are supposed to be the nouveau riche, the people who have the money. And I had a conversation with my driver, because then even him, he falls under that category. And if you calculate how much is it, it's at 15,400 shillings a month. And it was quite disturbing. And then if you look at our rural areas. They are basically slums. They are just scattered slums. Look at the way the people have constructed houses. If you look at central Kenya, I don't know what's going to happen because land has been subdivided so much to the point that it's unviable. And then you have a cohort of young, energetic, visionary Kenyans who have a vision, but they are frustrated. And then you look at, again, scenarios, ambitions, very strong ones from the counties. There are investors' conferences everywhere. There are Miss Tourism showing the beauty of the counties. So many ideas coming. I had a conversation with the county executive of Mandera, and she tells me she has a budget of 700 million to do roads. So what is the cost of 1 kilometer of a road? To her place is 70 million. So that is only 10 kilometers. So what do you do with that? Just make 10 kilometers from the governor's residence, I don't know, around the town. Maybe just creating a central square. And then you see people like Governor Gachagua saying they are doing agriculture in Nyeri. And of course, others seem to be quite confused. Some of them are buying very big vehicles that have no roads to walk around, to drive around. So I think sitting in the National Assembly, in the Budget Committee and National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity, I see a lot of fragmentation. We are now having the sector working groups coming to us from the various ministries. And you see fragmentation, you see the kind of priorities we have in the country, and it is worrying, I must tell you, my dear brothers and sisters. Because how we are spending our money is wrong. We are spending our money on things that we don't need to spend on, and you find one function is being done by more than one ministry or sector. Like, for example, the youth, they are under devolution, some component, the other component is under special social protection programs. Same case with gender. So that way, I don't know whether we are getting value for money. And when you look through, you can clearly see that we are struggling with issues of recurrent and development expenditure. Now, we have been engaging the Office of the Controller of Budget and the Office of the Auditor General. And corruption is rife, really. People are still concerned about allowances, about how they are going to get good offices. This is something that is worrying us. If you look at all the ministries, they are coming to us telling us how they want to construct headquarters. A headquarter of the Higher Education Loans Board is going to cost 2 billion shillings, while putting up another diploma training college for teachers is about 200 million shillings. And you ask yourself, what is this disparity? Of course, it's corruption. There's somebody who has actually schemed to seep money out of the public coffers. Now, these inequalities that we are talking about, really, you know very well that apart from Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, and Eldoret, and Nakuru, I think there is nothing else in the rest of the country. They are just little hamlets called towns there that have sometimes very big names. When you hear them, you want to go and see, but when you go, you see, if you hear Kiminini, you think it's a very big place, but it's just a market of stalls there with some traders selling some mutumba clothes, not even from our own factories. That's the reality of our country. So I'm just asking myself, if then you want to increase the consumption capacity of Kenyans, if you really want to have these grandiose projects, who is the consumer here? Because the pockets of Kenyans are empty. Yeah? If you go to Nyeri town, it is a sleeping town. There's nothing there. Kiambu is just a one-street town there. The only providence is that is there next to Nairobi here. That is the country we are in. But yet we don't seem to grapple with that because people are still concerned about, Mr. Big Town, the one who has got a big name there, the governor, Mr. Governor, the member of parliament. I think the big man syndrome is costing us. Now, we are also trying as a country to come up with social protection programs. So now we are giving cash transfers to persons with severe disabilities. We are giving cash transfers to the older persons, orphans, and vulnerable children. And the question is, this then is supposed to stimulate the economy from below. But then, is it a consumption? It's just for consumption? Does it subsidize production or consumption? Now, for the last 50 years, that's what we've been doing. We have been subsidizing consumption. And year in, year out, we're asking for more to consume. And even at a macro level, how then are these inequalities, showing up? Is who gets the tender? Who gets the tender? And then there is a question of redistribution. Does he or she subcontract, or does he get all the profit after giving the car to the big boys? You have this whole issue of preferential procurement for women, youth, and persons with disabilities. I don't know whether those procurement officers in those ministries will allow this underprivileged group of persons to get into the gravy train. And whether even then that was to happen, really, to what extent, what percentile would we see of that actualization? So my reflections about inequality, are we pulling together or pulling apart? I think I'm very enthused, I'm very encouraged by the fact that we have a report to work with, so that nobody will go and say they did not know where we were starting from. But I see for me, and this is critical, the role of the civil society, the role of the independent offices and constitutional commissions, the role of Parliament, but most importantly, the role of the citizens in ensuring that we keep the people who have the responsibilities, the duty bearers, accountable. Because there is a way in which power manifests itself. And because of the big man syndrome that we have in Kenya, and of course the rest of Africa, the only way that one is supposed to be appreciated is they are seen to be having. And that is a motivation that makes leaders to be corrupt, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen. Because the pressure from the public is that then you need to be, in this big car. And I will tell you my personal story. When I went into Parliament, I was driving a small Toyota car. And I was very comfortable with that. Very comfortable. But then, when I get out of this small Toyota car, the Kenyans around me look at me like, where is Mheshimiwa? You're not a full Mheshimiwa. So what is the next thing? You buy a Prado, isn't it? Then everybody in town respects you. Now, what would make a governor not steal money to go and start a factory there so that you say he's rich? I think we need to have an honest conversation as a country. And it's not a one-sided thing. It's not about railing the wall of leaders. It's a question of looking at our value systems. It's a question of really saying that we have our priorities where it matters most. Because currently, I think we are still groping with it. Look at it this way. Here you have a CDF. Here you have the County Integrated Development Plan. And then you have all those other little agendas. You have the Ways of Fund now. You have the Youth Empowerment Fund. You have the women. What are we doing as a country? This fragmentation is going to cost us. Because if you look at public finances as public good, then what is it that then this little money is everywhere can do? And the administrative costs that come with that. We need to really go back to the drawing board. And I think if then we have to do so, we need to look at how is it then, can we re-engineer change from below? How do we ensure that we have people having money in their pockets so that they can drive these communities around the counties forward? How do we ensure, for example, that then, is there a cost-effective way, for example, of doing roads, so that we can cheapen this burden of having 70 million shillings for 1 kilometer of road? Is there a way of having decent housing? Are we, for example, decent enough to follow rules of urban development? Because if you look at Mama Kijiji here is speaking on behalf of slum dwellers, but I think if you look even at what we call gated communities, they're just some form of slummish things there, because they're not very well planned, and sometimes, sometimes you get sad. You look at garbage everywhere. Look at Thika Road, for example. A master plan at 21st century infrastructure, but then look at Githurai there, even people urinating by the some of these behavioral things. So I think moving forward, I think it's a change of paradigm. It's a change of paradigm. It's a concerted effort. But as I said earlier on, I appreciate Society for International Development because of the reflections that you've had. Of course, they are going to be rubbished by policymakers. They will want to come with their own data. But I think with collaboration with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, I'm sure that people may want to look at that. And we, in the National Assembly, and where I sit in the Budget Committee, we are very keen on funding programmatic interventions. We do not want to hear this issue of recurrent expenditure. We want programs that bring out the reality of Kenya. It's not a mirage. I mean, we are 17 years to the Vision 2030. It's not going to happen abracadabra jiberiji. We must make concerted efforts. And I think everybody has a responsibility to reflect and to see what is it that we can do together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. I think it's very reassuring to hear the concrete steps that you and other colleagues in the Budget Committee of the National Assembly are actually taking to help address some of these issues that we are just discussing today. I would like at this point to invite Alex Awiti, the Executive Director of East Africa Institute, who also has written and studied these matters quite in depth. Please.
Thanks, Ali, and all the organizers of this important event. I want to pay special tribute to my co-panelists. Anastasia, thank you so much. Honorable Mwaura, you give us hope to hear our elected leaders speak with such eloquence and a sense of a vision. I think in my part of the world and the people that I interact with, it's pretty miserable seeing people like myself involved with this rat race, a big house, a big bank account, a big car. I think it's vanity. And I think one of the things that I've always said is that the Kenyan middle class is actually the chief perpetrator-in-chief of inequality. I think we've disengaged as citizens. We have basically evolved solutions for all the problems that we should use to hold government accountable. When the schools fail, we take our kids to private schools. When the what disconcerts me is that it is difficult for us to talk about these things when essentially these are symptoms of a larger problem that has been decades in the making. I think one of the biggest issues is governance incapability. I think we've seen this consistently for the last 50 years of incapable bureaucracy and non-visionary leadership, consistently for the last 50 years. Look at this picture. 35% of Kenyans are stunted. Kenyan kids are stunted. That means that it perpetrates into adulthood, and that is a critical problem for cognitive capability, for the capability of citizens. And I believe there is such a thing as the quality of human beings. So you can imagine, right at birth, 35% of the population is completely sidetracked. They're pulling aside, and they will not participate in income-generating activities. They will not achieve in education. If you look at gross enrollment ratios in primary schools, it is 113%. If you look at high school, it is less than 60%. If you look at enrollment ratios in university, it is less than 5%. A good example is we have 1 million kids who are enrolled in primary school when they started. Only 800,000 are finishing class 8 this year. Only 400,000 are finishing Form 4 this year. So look at that huge attrition. Every year we produce into the job market 800,000 people. Our economy can only generate 50,000 half-decent jobs. So what's happening? In many respects, I think that Kenyans' chickens are coming home to roost. The violence we see on the streets, the massive corruption we see in our government. I think we have basically put ourselves on this path of expanding inequality. We have had the most rapid growth in our economy over the last 10 years in the Kibaki administration. We've generated the hugest chasm of inequality in that same period. We generate so much wealth, but it only trickles upwards in the many ways that Honorable Mwaura has described. In the rent-seeking in government, in the patronage, and in the sickening levels of corruption. 30% of our budget is unaccountable, is unaccounted for. And this has been consistent since 2010. We steal 300 billion of taxpayers' money. That goes into our pockets. That builds all this real estate that you see. It puts gas and keeps these SUVs driving. You go to government parking lots, these are some of the they're like showrooms for state-of-the-art in technology for cars. Not that having a car is a bad thing, but it is difficult to align and reconcile some of these consumption patterns that we see. So I think, in my view, this is a pattern that will continue for a really long time. If you look at those numbers in education outcomes, in health outcomes, the things that should prepare kids and future adults to be the leaders and the active and engaged drivers of the economy of this country. So until we go back to the very basics, we've been talking about conditional cash transfers. What are we doing to mothers that Katindi was talking about, who are really disadvantaged? They can't provide a decent meal for their kids so that the kids have good nutrition and have a decent chance to even have a path to college. What is the opportunity for progressive social policy making to begin to address some of these problems? We've seen the numbers around sanitation. Diarrhea and all the infectious diseases that we see around rob these kids of their childhood. And if you look at per capita access to piped water in this country, it begins to basically give you a basis for understanding why these numbers and these statistics are what they are. But the problem is that the policy-making elites and the people in government, and to a very large extent, the citizens and the people like myself who have a voice, are basically comfortable to just look after our own. I think, to me, a fat bank account is a good thing. Having fat, chubby kids is a decent thing. A good house is a good thing. But I think, to me, these things betray a poverty of ambition. I don't think we can leave it to legislators. We elect them. And as Abuba said, you can't blame government. Government is us. These people are a reflection of you and I. You go to the bathroom now, take a look at the mirror, that's your president. They don't come from another planet. And it goes back to those same issues about value systems and what we privilege as citizens. I'm sick and tired of my own kind and the privilege that I have in this society, because if you listen to people like us and the things that we think about and the way that we understand society and the way that we act in this society, it makes me very ashamed to listen to the efforts of Anastasia and the huge impact that she's had. And I ask myself, what have I done with my life, apart from writing a weekly column in the Nairobi Star and running the East African Institute at Aga Khan University? It's terrible, and I think it calls us to reflect about what it is that we can give back to this society. Because I don't think that we can change these problems. I don't think that we can shift these structures and patterns. If all of us are going to sit down, read these beautiful reports, and I'm going to be writing a lot about it, but it's not going to change until you start with the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror. I think the burden of responsibility is ourselves. And we can't point a finger at anybody else except our own. So my appeal to you is that if we want to change the situation, if you want to look at different numbers 10 years from now, it starts with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Witi, for those remarks. Certainly, yes, I think the man in the mirror is, or the woman in the mirror has ultimate responsibility for this. So last but not least, I think we are happy to have with us also Commissioner Amina, who comes from a very critical constitutional commission that has a very important role to play in helping address some of these challenges that we have listed today on poverty and inequality. Karibu sana, Commissioner.
I'm sure we are almost approaching afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not scheduled to speak, but I'm going to say a few things. Having sat through this morning and listened to all the speakers, especially this panel here, especially Muungano wa Wanavijiji, the slum dwellers. I want to also congratulate SID and Kenya National Bureau of Statistics for various things. One thing is that, unlike the others, they've used the 2009 census, because everybody else has been using the poverty index. All the other statistics were using the KIBS for 2005, 2006, which were which are really long, those statistics are actually useless to be used now in 2013. So congratulations to you for using that. I love the census, because I remember the lady who came to question me during the census. They asked finer details. Do you have a pet? What kind of cooking methodology do you use? Are you using gas? Are you using electricity? I mean, that census was detailed. If we use that census, we can actually get all sorts of data, statistics, and interpretation thereof from that census. It was very, very detailed. But when you ask people, they'll tell you we need another billion to do a study on poverty. When we have these statistics, when we have this data, and that's the big question. I love the way it has been disaggregated to ward level, and I'm going to touch on that later. I was impressed by the non-money part of it compared to consumption, because in the last poverty index, we used calorific intake. That is how much calories does one take for the various regions or areas in Kenya. And Lamu came up very strong, because Lamu people were measured on how much calorie. They take fish, because it's the only thing, all the islands are surrounded by sea. What is very, very accessible? It's fish, isn't it? But people took that and used it. And in fact, it appears, to some extent, it must be affecting this data as well. People said, yeah, I eat fish, and fish has high calorie, which meant they were actually regarded as though they are one of the richest counties. But is that the case? If you've been to the islands, accessing the islands itself is a problem. So the governor of Lamu called me yesterday and told me, Amina, I want a copy of this report. Are they using the same? But I'm glad that there's a non-money data. So Kitindi, congratulations for that. There's a lot of room for us to work with SID and Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. We're going to study these statistics. But I also want to tell you something. I did a course with the World Bank, and we were looking at benefits incidence analysis. And we took the statistics, the data for primary education and secondary education. What we discovered is that the benefit for free primary education actually reaches all the quantiles of the Kenyan population, the 4 quantiles, to a certain degree. But when we went to secondary education, this was more beneficial to the haves as compared to the have-nots. And I'm glad Anastasia confirmed that secondary education is still not in the reach of most Kenyans, because you don't only pay, it's not only school fees, there are many other incidental costs, which means that policy is not pro-poor. That policy needs to be looked at very closely, because if it's meant for the poor, it's not reaching them. So there's a big debate around that. Redistributive justice. Every policy that we actually write as a nation, that should be the underlying thing. And I want to tie it with the Constitution. I think the word equitable appears very many times in the Constitution. Equitable, not equality. Equitable. There's a very big difference between the two words. So, for redistributive justice, for pro-poor policies, we need to look at this data very closely. But my final point is, how are we going to use this data? How are we going to use this report? I think every governor worth his salt, every MCA worth his salt, every statesman whose mandate is to provide services to wananchi, should read this report. Every Kenyan, for that matter. We've just been told by Awiti that we reflect. Every morning you stand in front of the mirror, reflect. And I think this kind of data is what we all need to look at. The ward representative should be able to look at these statistics and actually confirm that it's the truth on the ground. And thereafter, bring in policies that will actually make sure that he changes the life of that ward, the life of the people of that ward. So, what I also loved is agriculture. Agriculture is the backbone of Kenya, isn't it? In China, but just improving agriculture or bringing equity in agriculture has actually had tremendous results in the life of the Chinese. We learned something, isn't it? We can actually pick from that. And that's the kind of benchmarking that we are looking at. So for CRA, if I'm to speak on behalf of CRA, I would say a lot of room for working together with SID and Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. As you know, we are not an institution that collects data. We rely 110% on Kenya National Bureau of Statistics because they are the arm of the government that actually provides us with the statistics. And I'm glad that this time they've used the 2009 census. Thank you very much, that's all.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Amina, for those remarks, and I'm quite happy that you have underlined the fact that there is need for much closer collaboration between the various institutions to be able to address the challenges that are ahead of us. Please join me again to give another round of applause for all the panelists. I hope you have found it useful that we've had perspectives from very different people, very different experiences, and very different positions. I know it has been a long morning. We shall shortly take a short interlude and watch a video, but to introduce it, I would want to once again invite my colleague Katindi. Karibu.
All right, we have a short video that we want to show. I think after giving such hard numbers, it's only important that we humanize these numbers through the voices that you've heard, but also through this short clip. So kindly watch with us.
My name is Ajem with a J. I was born in Kotaruklo Bay in Turkana. It is very far from the city near the Karamojas of Uganda. That is my mother. She is the second of my father's 4 wives. We are 7 of us and I am the 5th. In total, my father has 15 children. Mother is mending the hat because soon there will be a big occasion here in our homestead and we will be having many guests. It will look bad if the hat has holes when the visitors come. Those are my father's animals. It has not rained for so long, and because of that, my brother spent all day looking for water and pasture. My father is worried that his animals might all die before he gives an inheritance to his sons. If this happens, my brothers will never be able to get married because they will not have enough animals to pay bride price to the families of their future wives. This is the skull of Kase. He was my father's biggest bull. He was very brave and troublesome sometimes. He managed to escape all the cattle raids by the Tokosa, Erile, Pokot, or even Karamoja. Unfortunately, he could not run away from the famine. My father was very sad when Kase died. If The cattle rustlers come again. They will take all my father's cattle. Sometimes they kill people and no policemen come to help us. Ajuk, wait for me. This is Ajuk, my elder sister. She is 15 years old and very beautiful. Soon, in just a few weeks, Ajuk is going to get married to Akil. Father is happy because he will get more cows. I am also very happy because there will be a celebration in our home, and my sister will give me and my other sisters her colored beaded necklaces. I can't wait for Ajuk's wedding because there will be a lot of food on that day. Father might slaughter a cow.
Let me go. I need to catch up with the rest because we are going all the way to Lokichurch to get water. The wells that had been dug near the riverbeds have all dried up.
Lokichar is very far away. When Ajuk goes for water there, she does not come back until midday. I miss school. Mother told us it was free, so we used to go often. I like looking at the beautiful pictures in the books at the mission school. But my favorite part is the school feeding program. We eat a lot and sometimes bring some food home. Since the drought started, many of us have to look after our younger siblings. When our parents go to look for food and our older siblings are out fetching water or grazing the animals, so we don't go to school anymore.
Ajem,
Yes, Mother.
we're going to the valley to look for food. Make sure there's enough firewood when we return, huh?
Yes, Mother. They are going to look for wild fruits and berries for cooking in the evening. The cows have not been producing enough milk because there is no grass. We are going to look for firewood now. I hope Mother finds berries so that we can have something to eat tonight. I also hope she finds the kind that cook very fast. The berries did not taste that good, and I am not so full, but at least today we are not sleeping hungry. I wonder whether I will ever enjoy a good life. Is it ever going to be possible for me to break free from this prison of lack? When I am 2 times poorer than an average Kenyan, when the probability of me ever getting a paid job is 15 times less than an average Kenyan, or when the probability of me ever earning more than 7,200 shillings per month is 13 times less than an average Kenyan. Will I ever break free from this prison of my mind? When the probability of me ever learning how to read and write is 4 times less than an average Kenyan? When the probability of having a primary education is 17 times less than that of an average Kenyan? When the probability of having a secondary education and above is 63 times less than that of an average Kenyan. Will I ever break free from this prison of inhumanity? When my chances of getting clean water are 3 times less than an average Kenyan? When my chances of getting improved sanitation are 63 times less than an average Kenyan? Will I ever be free from the prison of indignity? When the probability of living in a home with a cemented floor or a mabati-roofed house is 82 times less than that of an average Kenyan. When the probability of living in a stone brick-walled house is 336 times less than that of an average Kenyan. When my chances of ever using electricity are non-existent. At the chief's baraza, father and the other elders were told of how Turkana has a lot of oil and water under the ground. They were also told about the money that government had given to develop the area. I wonder if those will make a difference in my life. I am a prisoner in this life of poverty and neglect. Will I ever be free? I wonder.
Held guilty for many things, but one of the things we cannot be held guilty for is not giving you dry statistics. So we've given you cartoons, statistics, reactives. So I think all that's left really is probably lunch. Not so. Okay. All right, we coming to the best part of the morning, which essentially is the launch of the report. So it gives me great pleasure just to invite up on this platform here, if I can invite Katindi, if I can invite Betty Minor and also Professor Peter Wanyande. If they can please come up. We will just go through the launch ceremony and then release everybody to get a copy of the report and also to have something to eat.